Awesome. Well, first, I want to congratulate you.
Thank you.
I think that this is awesome. I think it's a story of resilience, recruiting
Yeah.
resilience.
Mhm.
And so I having talked to you several times last summer and then earlier in the fall and then kind of accumulating this, I'm really excited. So I do want to congratulate you on your commitment to the University of Minnesota. So
Thank you.
let's start from the very beginning. So when did you start thinking about playing college soccer?
Honestly, I started thinking about it right when I started playing ECNL, which is, if you don't know, it's Elite Clubs National League. You probably do. But it's like it's a travel-based team, and you like go to showcases all around the U.S. and you kind of just like showcase yourself to these college coaches. And at first, I kind of just wanted to get more serious with soccer, and like since I joined in December of my freshman year. So I wasn't really sure about playing in college yet because I was still so young. But then I went to a couple showcases and I was already getting looked at by certain colleges. So I was like, oh my gosh, like this is real. And then as time went on, I kind of was just like, by my sophomore year, I was like, no, I want to play. Like I couldn't imagine not playing soccer, I think. Like I think the thing for me is like if I went to college, I just couldn't imagine not playing. And so that's when I knew like I really want to do this. And so I would say freshman year going into sophomore year, or freshman summer going into sophomore year is definitely when I started saying like I want to do this.
And so when you went to your first ECNL event and you saw those college coaches, was that kind of the trigger?
Yeah, well, it was actually really funny. So my not my first. Oh wait, yeah, I guess it was my first. I went to um Houston, Texas in February of 2018, and I we were just playing a game, and usually since we were like the youngest group that
Mhm.
back then, like no colleges really look at you because it's not your junior year or your sophomore year where it's like the main like focus for recruiting. So it was our freshman year, so we weren't really expecting a lot of colleges to look at us. And then we saw a coach talking to one of our coaches because at the time the coach can't talk to you directly with the NCAA rules and whatnot. And so after the game, my coach came up to me and was like, "Hey, this coach says that he really liked you." And then I was like, "Where, like, what's the school?" And it's actually really funny. So the first school that ever showed interest was Minnesota. And so I was like, oh my gosh. And then I called my parents and I was like, this just happened. Like, it's crazy. Like, I can't believe it. And they were like, okay, don't get like too like excited. Like, we'll just see how things pan out and stuff. And so then the summer going into my sophomore year, I went to their ID camp. But yeah, I think the trigger was definitely just seeing the like literally just seeing them lined up on the sidelines. And at the ECNL showcases, there's like it's a lot more professional than just regular club games because there's a whole like sideline in between fields where it's like scouts only, and it's just like a lineup of like scouts from literally every single college you can imagine. And so it definitely puts things into perspective, and it's really intimidating, but it's also super cool to see. Like they're here to see me. It's kind of just like crazy, I guess.
And did you guys record those games back then?
No, we didn't record any of our games up until we started using Trace. We might have recorded one or two with like Huddle or something, but up until I want to say end of sophomore year, beginning of junior year is when we started like really recording them every single game. And then ever since we've been doing Trace the whole time.
So when after this kind of first, showcase and you saw these college coaches, how did you build your list of schools? Like what were you thinking about? What did you want to do? I know you were only 15, 16 years
Yeah.
old. So how did you formulate that list?
I think the main thing that the main criteria I would say that I tried to narrow down my list with was definitely location. I didn't want to be in Oregon, which is kind of funny because a lot of there's a stigma around people from the West Coast saying that everyone, like all these girls, want to stay on the West Coast if they're from there. And like, yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to going to California schools, but like I wanted to get out. I don't know why. Like it just really interests me to like go and explore new places, I guess. And like just kind of having like a full um like fresh start from high school is kind of what I wanted to. And also size, I wanted it to be a pretty like fairly big school. So my smallest school that I was looking at was probably Gonzaga or Cal Poly, and my biggest school was probably Minnesota. And I wanted to play D1. That was my like probably the main criteria that I had was like I wanted to go Division 1. And it's definitely hard like having that in your mind when you first go into like trying to play college soccer because you're getting looks from D3 and D2 schools which are like awesome, but then you're like but I want to play at this next level. Like I know I can, like I want to. And so I think that was my main criteria and that was kind of the goal that I was chasing even though it definitely was hard to get there, but yeah.
So besides obviously wanting to get out of the Great Northwest, what else was important? You know, between Gonzaga and Cal Poly and Minnesota, that's a lot of variance.
Yeah.
What else was on your list? What else was
Well, the coaching styles was a main thing for me. Like I really wanted to obviously like the coaches. I didn't want to go to a school that I thought was going to be like a super cool school to go to, but me not like the coaches. And when I met the coaches from Minnesota, I was automatically like they were so communicative with me, and they were very like they showed interest right away, and they were like setting me up with everyone else in our class, and it was just like super nice to see that. And then when I also went to Gonzaga's ID camp, and they were kind of the same way. They were just very welcoming and stuff. And the team atmosphere at all these schools that I was like looking at really like made me even more interested in all of them, I think. And so yeah, I would say one of the other main things was definitely like the team atmosphere slash like the coaches and like the staff that I thought was super cool. So yeah.
nothing about academics there, Callie?
I mean, yeah, definitely academics. But I think for me, I was so focused on, well, it's weird because I was super focused on soccer for freshman, sophomore year, and then junior and this senior year, I was like, I'm not playing because of COVID. I was like, there's no way that I'm gonna be able to play. And then that's when I was like, I mean, I've always been like motivated and I've had good grades, but I think that definitely junior and senior year is when I really started to be like, okay, like I'm gonna do really well in my classes and whatever happens, happens, but I want to apply to all these schools. And I applied to all of them without even thinking about soccer. And so, which is weird, but it's kind of just how things ended up playing out with COVID.
So if you weren't getting any interest from like the University of Minnesota or Cal Poly or another one of these schools, you still wanted to attend school there.
Yeah, so well, it's kind of weird because I didn't really think about Minnesota too much up until um, they started showing interest in me again. Because actually, when I was emailing the coaches at Minnesota, when I went to their ID camp in going into my sophomore year, their assistant coach was also like their recruiting coordinator, and I was emailing her all of my stuff. But then right after, I want to say like the year after I went to that ID camp, she left the coaching staff, and I didn't know that. And so I kept on emailing her, and obviously I wasn't hearing back. So I was like, okay, this is weird. So then I was like, kind of not thinking about Minnesota anymore. But yeah, I definitely loved Gonzaga. My sister goes to Gonzaga, and she doesn't play a sport or anything. And Cal Poly seems super cool. And every single school that I applied to, I would love to play soccer, but I'd also love just to go there. So
Okay. So did you just contact the assistant coaches on your emails? And what did you include on these introductory emails?
yeah, so I contacted mostly assistant coaches or recruiting coordinators. And if there wasn't like an assistant coach or recruiting coordinator like email that I got a hold of, I would just contact the head coach. And basically I just explained well, the modified version, there was like a like when I was younger, I would just say like my name's Cali Carmichael, like this is my grade, like my age, and I'm really interested in your school. Your atmosphere seems awesome, and I'd love to hear more about it. And obviously, like you'd explain like GPA and SAT, ACT if you took them, and just kind of like the gist of what you kind of like who you kind of are. But then now it has so it has who I am, and then it also has my GPA and all of my references. So I have 3 references. I have two of my club coaches that I've had, and then my high school coach, and then it has my GPA, and it would have my SAT and ACT scores, but I didn't take them because of COVID. And then it has my Trace ID, and then right before the Trace ID, it in the email it explains like how the coaches navigate it and how you can press like jump to a full game, and then how you can see my stats and like my stamina and whatnot. And but yeah, and then they were like they said it was super easy to navigate through Trace, which was nice, and they were able to see all of my like statistics, obviously, which was good. But it was definitely a more modified version now than it was before, and way more effective, I would say.
So it's been a really hard road, right, for you? Because you
Yes.
mentioned that freshman, sophomore year, man, you were all in and excited, and then COVID hit, and you were like, oof, I
Yeah.
don't know now. So how did you deal with all that? Like what kept you going?
I think, well, it's weird because obviously freshman, sophomore year, I wanted to play super bad, and the rule that you can't contact a coach until September of your junior year didn't come out yet until I want to say halfway through sophomore year. And once that came out, I was like, crap, like I can't do anything. So I was kind of just like sitting there like, okay, next year is going to be my year. Like I was so excited for it. And then obviously next year happened. I went to 2 showcases, and I got a couple looks, but not really from the schools that I was wanting. And then I was just kept emailing and calling coaches, and I would hear back from some, and all of them would say like, "Oh, come to our ID camp in the spring, like it'll be in March or whatever." And so like March, April, May, all those months were supposed to be like my prime time. And then April was the showcase for Phoenix, which is where a lot of um my schools that I was wanting would go to, because the only showcases I went to before that were Florida and Texas, which didn't have very many schools that I wanted, but Phoenix usually brings in the most coaches. And so I was like super excited to go to that. But then once March hit, obviously everything started to fall apart. And at first I didn't think about it because I was like, oh, we'll be out of this by June. Like it'll be fine. You know, like we were all hopeful that it'll be over. Like we were thinking it's that 2-week break or whatever. And then once I started getting into the summer, I was just kind of thinking to myself like what am I supposed to do? Like I was still emailing coaches, but I think I was very I don't know, I was very like unmotivated at this point, because I was just like, I'm not hearing back, and they're all like, all these coaches are probably worried about their seasons. Like they don't know if they're going to play, so they're not worried about who's contacting them for recruits. And then I'm seeing these other girls commit in my grade, and I'm like, how are they doing this? And like I think it was just definitely stressful, but at the same time I continued to motivate myself, because one, I was still playing like club soccer 3 days a week, and I was still working out on my own. And I think I was just like, I know I can do this. And so, oh, sorry. I was like, I know I can do this. And I think that's what kept me going, because obviously not having coaches contact you is definitely hard, and they're not responding at all, and you're doing it for the past like 3-4 months. But I think my main like restriction was COVID in itself. Like I knew I could do it, and nobody was telling me I couldn't, but the odds were completely against me, if that makes sense, like with the situation I was in, especially it being my junior year.
So what advice, like how would you help those? Because there's still a lot of 2021s that are battling. I'm sure some of your friends are still kind of in this same mix. So what would your advice your advice be to them?
Honestly, I think my main thing would be right now, if you're still trying and you're 21 or even a 22, like reach out to players on the team, try to DM people like that have any sort of connection to the school that you want to go to. Try and tell your coaches like, hey, can you call this school for me? Like I've been thinking a lot about trying to get seen by them. And if you obviously if you um, film your games, like the schools that I was interested in before I committed, um, when we would film our games with Trace, I would be like, hey, like I played a game last weekend. Um, this is like what it is, so they can see how you're doing even while you're still in COVID, because obviously they can't come and watch your games in person, but you can say like, hey, I played this game last weekend and I just want like you to take a look and whatever. But yeah, definitely don't give up, because you literally have no idea what opportunity can come forward. Like if you asked me 3 months ago if I was playing soccer in college, I would laugh and be like, there's no way. Like it's so against me, because I was honestly like so down about it. But yeah, definitely don't give up. And I I didn't give up just because in my mind I was like, I know I can play, and I know there's a ton of girls on my team who still aren't committed that I know can totally play, but it's just whether, honestly at this point, it's whether you want it or not.
So tell us the Minnesota story. Like,
Yeah.
obviously they were interested at you at the very beginning, and the coach that you were recruiting or that you were talking to left the staff, and it
Yeah.
just went dark. So what happened next?
So basically, yeah, so they saw me at their game, at my game, and they said that they liked me, but the guy who came to my game is still on the coaching staff. But the woman who was basically like recruiting me to go to the camp that summer is the one who left. And um, so I went to this ID camp, and I really liked the campus, but I was still super young. Like I wasn't even thinking about college at that point, because I was going into my sophomore year. Like I couldn't even drive yet. Like it just felt like so far away. Um, and then so all of my junior year, I was emailing coaches, and I wasn't honestly really emailing Minnesota, because like I said, I hadn't heard back from them at all. So I was like, like it's probably not going to happen. So I didn't really email them. And then so my mom is really good friends with uh, this man who's a father of the girl on Minnesota's soccer team. And she actually she used to play at Jesuit high school, which is rival schools with my high school. And so we played against each other for a year or two. And then I would see her when we went to the ID camps and whatever. And he texted my mom, and he was like, I think that her name's Katie. And he was like, I think that Katie is thinking of transferring out of Minnesota because, I mean, she loves the school, but she wanted to, because at the beginning she was choosing between Stanford and Minnesota. So she could go pretty much wherever she wanted. Like she's really good. And so my mom, she was like, I'm thinking of transferring to somewhere where more people on the team want to go pro, because that's her goal. And she said that people at Minnesota didn't have the same goal as her, so she wanted to go somewhere like UNC, Stanford, just somewhere that was bigger, that she would be able to get drafted and stuff like that. And my mom was like, oh my gosh, that's great, whatever. And then he was like, how's Callie's process going? And she was like, oh, like we don't think it's gonna happen, but like she's okay and whatever. And he was like, you should try and get in touch with Stephanie Golan, which is the head coach. And he was like, she's been looking for a center back for next year's class, because they only have 6 recruits right now. And my mom was like, okay, like we'll shoot her an email, see what happens. So we sent her an email with all of my stuff, my Trace ID, everything, explaining how it happens, explaining that we knew Hugh Duong. And she got back to me within, I want to say like 3 hours, and was like, let's set up a Zoom tomorrow. And so she said, so I was in a Zoom the next day with her, and it was kind of like this. She was just asking me questions about like COVID, and the main thing is, so I sent her a lot of my film and my highlight videos and my trace ID and whatever. And when we got on the call, she was like, why aren't you committed? Like what? Like what's the deal? And so I basically just told her about everything with COVID and how it has been a tough road. And she was like, let's get this ball rolling. And basically she was talking to her assistant coaches, and both of her assistant coaches were like, yeah, like she fits the standard that we want. Like, I don't know why she's not committed either. And so I had that Zoom with her, and then she sent me a lot of information. And then I still had to apply to Minnesota because I was like, crap, well, then I better like apply now. And so I applied and actually heard back from them like a week after that, which was fairly fast, and got in. So that's all good. But then the week after that, I had a meeting with all of the coaches. So like the athletic coordinator, the trainers, all of that type of stuff, and like the academic person or whatever. And then and then I had another Zoom meeting with a girl in my class who graduated early, who's already there. And I was basically like just asking her about like the atmosphere, and she was like, I love it, it's amazing, like you'll fit in right away. And then she texted me and she was like, okay, you can announce it, like you're like you can announce that you're signed and whatever. And it literally happened within, I want to say, like a 2-week span. Like it was crazy fast. But I mean, I don't know. It's what I've wanted, so.
But do you think all of your experiences that you had, kind of the roller coaster, made those 2 weeks pretty easy?
Yeah, I think I definitely think so. I was definitely like nervous for all of the Zoom calls, obviously, and stuff like that. But honestly, like when I went on to all of them, they were like, you have what it takes. Like we wouldn't be recruiting you if we didn't think you could play. Um, and I think in my mind, like even now when I play, I'm still like, oh, I'm not good enough or whatever, whatever. But honestly, it all comes down to the fact where I think about, I was like, they wouldn't have me like be committed to their school if they didn't think that I could do this. And I think it still doesn't really feel like that real because I committed at a month ago exactly, actually. And so it still just doesn't feel like that it's really happening. But I think it's crazy too because from now I'll leave in like 3-4 months, and it's just like yeah, I don't know, I'm definitely ready for it. And I think that all of the stuff that's led me to this point has gotten me ready for it, and all of the crap I had to deal with COVID definitely got me ready for it. But yeah, it's definitely an exciting process, and I'm still getting used to it for sure.
So you were one of our first, you were one of our beta testers with Trace ID, right? And I think you went through an individual session with Adrian, and then you did a couple with me, and I think I did one with your mom right before you guys went on like summer vacation or
Yeah.
something. You were headed to Boise or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. And so you've been with us for a long time. What are Trace ID's best features? What did you like about using it? Did it save you time?
I think that, well, my favorite feature, honestly, from a player's perspective, is definitely looking at my stats, like my stamina and the miles per hour, like I ran, and like where I came on like the fitness level aspect, and how many like the touch chains was really nice to see because rather than looking at the whole game and trying to figure out like snippets of where you touch the ball and like your highlights, you can just click your touch chains and see every single time you touch the ball and every single time like you do something good, I guess. And also like being a defender, it's really nice to see like me being able to go up, or like the passing patterns that I was able to do with other girls, instead of just defending, like because it's honestly hard to get recruited as a defender because forwards, they can send clips of them scoring right and left, and defending, it's definitely a different beast. But no, Trace made it super easy with the touch chains. It was definitely a lot more time. It was definitely a lot more time saving, but also it was very just helpful altogether. Like even seeing it and not thinking about highlight tapes, like being able to just click my name and seeing all the times I touched it, and even seeing like how I can improve or how I did that well. It's super cool. So
So you trace on the weekend. Walk me through your process. Like, how often would you create and resend a playlist? Just, yeah, tell me about your workflow.
yeah, so basically, at the beginning of the summer, when I went back on a lot of my showcases. Well, after every 2 days after you play a game is usually when you get your trace results. And so I'd usually watch the game right away, and I just watch it, and I would watch the full game, and I wouldn't look at any of my touch chains, and I would just watch it and kind of reflect on it. And then a little bit after that is when I would go through it and actually like take snippets out of each game and try and like figure out which ones I like, which ones I think that the coaches would like. And then recently, with COVID, we have been using Trace for film, actually, like for practices. We would do little Zoom sessions where our coaches would go over film with us with Trace, which was super helpful. But yeah, I kind of would watch all the games, and I didn't look at them for a while because I was like, okay, like I need to stop overthinking like what I'm doing or whatever. And then I'd come back to them and take out the snippets that I'm like, ooh, like I liked that, or like things that I like remember that I did well, like after watching the game, I guess. And so yeah, but it was super easy to come up with a highlight tape, honestly. Like you literally just take all of the different like chains that you like from different games, and you can put them all together into one highlight tape, and you can circle yourself and like other people to make sure that the coaches know like who's who and stuff, which was super easy. But yeah, mainly I would play the games on the weekends, and then on the weekdays when the games would come out, I'd watch them, and then I'd take a break for like 3 days, and then after that I would kind of put them all together.
And then how often would you send it out to your target list of colleges?
Well, so I definitely tried to send out all of my trace chains when we played higher level teams, pretty much. So if we played a team that was ranked in like the number 1, 2 seed, and we were ranked lower than them, those are the chains that I would send out to coaches. And then in the email I would say, this is the number 1 ranked team in this state right now, and this is how we played against them, and you can go and look at like how I played and like where my stamina was in the trace. Because I feel like if I were to send them teams that we blew out 9-0, it just wouldn't have been as effective. And I would even send them games where we lost, and I would just be like, hey, like this is like we're number 6, they're number 2, like this is how we matched up together. Because I feel like at the end of the day, it's definitely better to see how you play against a higher level team than obviously like playing down to a lower level team, I guess. So I would mostly send out games where we knew that it was going to be like a good game or an intense game.
Did you get any feedback from college coaches about your Trace ID? Did they find it helpful?
Yeah, so actually when I was on the Zoom with the Minnesota coach, she said that it was super helpful being able to click through. And also it was kind of funny when I would send some of my coaches my trace stuff, they would actually also see other girls on my team, and they would reach out to the girls on my team who they also thought were good. So it's honestly kind of helpful for everyone, because some girls also who reached out to other coaches would contact me, and it was like back and forth, and it was very like fluid. And so it was actually super nice, because all of the coaches were not only able to see your own, but you as like a whole team, and then also other girls if they're looking for, let's say I email them and I want to be the center back, but they're looking for a right back, then I'd be like, totally fine, but go look at this girl on my team, like she's good, super good. And then from there they can email her, and it's just very fluid process, which I liked.
Right. No, that's great. But would you rate it like on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the easiest, 2 being the hardest? How was your just being able to create a playlist and send it out? What would you rate it?
I would say honestly a 4. At first, it it's kind of annoying to try to get all the clips together that you like. And it's definitely hard doing it as a player because you're so nitpicky about yourself. Because when my mom coached high school soccer for like 16 years. And so when she would come over to when I was doing it, she was like, "Why don't you put that in? Like you like I like it." And I was like, "No, no, I hate it. Like I did this so bad." But then she was like, "But then you recovered and you did this so well." Like there were times that I put in my trace like links that I like got beat, but then I recovered and got the ball back. And in my head, I was like, "Oh, like I just got beat. Like there's no way, like no way I'm putting that in my highlight tape." But then my mom was like, "But your recovery is what matters." And so I think I had to kind of take out all of my like judgments and kind of look at it from what would a coach see in a way. And then I also sent the finished highlight tapes to my coaches and like got them approved before I sent them over to college coaches. But yeah, I think that it was super easy once you get the hang of it and once you kind of realize I'm not the one that's going to be like watching this, and no college coach is going to be as nitpicky as I am because it's myself playing.
So besides, the creation of your Trace ID playlist, um, how did just going through that, do you think it helped with your just basic development? Like, did you pick up on things that you didn't know you were doing, and had you not been using your Trace ID playlist to do that, you would not have seen that?
Yeah, I definitely think that if even now, if we still weren't using Trace, like I wouldn't have picked up on a lot of things that I was either doing wrong or even doing well. And like like I was saying, like when I played, I would play the games and then in my head I would be like, oh, I did that well or did that well. But then watching them back, you like point out so many more things like about like how well you did, even if you're like doing like a little passing pattern with someone else and you didn't realize it in the moment, but like when you watch it back, you're like, oh my gosh, like I did that so well. And so I think it's definitely helped my development for sure, regardless of recruiting or coaches or whatever. Me watching it as a player, I was definitely able to see what I need to improve on and also what I feel confident in and what like I know that I can do, because when I look back at my all my trace games, I know like I'm confident in tackling, I'm confident in heading the ball, but I need to like do better at dropping back and supporting or like stuff like that, or like going up and trying to cross it in, or like it's the little things that I've now realized like I need to do that better, or like I got that down basically.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I agree. I think the more that you watch yourself play, the better you become, whether you're using
Mm-hmm.
the video for college recruiting or just for development. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would be your last bit of advice as not just for not just for the class of 2021, but for these younger classes that are maybe just beginning their process, or maybe it's a freshman
Mm-hmm.
that's looking up to you now that you're soon to be a gopher. What would be kind of your parting advice about the recruiting process?
Um, it's not easy. I'm just gonna put it out there. Like it's not easy at all, regardless of COVID or not. The dead period and the NCAA rules and what you can and can't do, and you can call coaches as much as you want, and they might not be able to respond back to you at all. Like it's definitely hard, and the main thing is like if you really want it, you just need to keep contacting all of the coaches. I contacted coaches that I didn't even want to go to the school. I just wanted to see what they like thought. And I contacted coaches that were all levels. I contacted D2, D3, everything. I had interviews with D3 coaches that I just would use as practice for um, Division 1 coaches. And I think that at the end of the day, if a coach responds back to you and says, "Oh, sorry, don't we don't think that like you fit our program or whatever," you can't take it personally. Like that's what I've learned. Like as much as I wanted to go to these other schools, like they would respond to me and be like, "Oh, we have too many numbers now that the seniors are getting an extra year, blah 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 blah." You can't take it personally. Like the coaches are going to do whatever they can to make their program the strongest they can. And if you don't fit the mold, then you'll fit the mold somewhere else. But as long as you're confident in yourself, like just keep on doing it. And I promise, like there will be an opportunity that opens up, regardless of if it's a walk-on, if it's a scholarship, whatever, there'll be an opportunity.
You are an extremely wise individual, Callie.
Thank you.
I agree. The recruiting process is a personal process, but should never be taken personally. And the more that you invest in the process, the more opportunities are going to arise, regardless of whether it's COVID landscape or rules or anything else like that. So your advice is great. The big question is your mom was an absolute superstar at Washington State.
Yeah.
In the 90s. What sort of an influence did she have on you?
So it's kind of funny because she actually had to try out at Washington State. They didn't really know much about her, and she was planning on playing at PLU, but then things got complicated, and like last minute she ended up going to Washington State, and then there was a tryout day for preferred walk-ons if they wanted it, and she was talking back and forth with the coach before that she went, and the coach was super super negative to her, being like, you can come if you want, we really don't care, blah 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 blah. And then my mom, I think, kind of just came to the realization, and she was like, I want to play, like I know I can beat out 90% of these girls, like who cares if they don't think I can. And then I think she just went into it thinking like, I can do this, I got this. And she was this soon to be starter for every single game, and she came on and nobody thought that she even had like any ounce of like being able to play college soccer, pretty much. And so I think that definitely pushed me, because regardless of like the coaching staff or whatever, like if she could play, then I knew I could play. And also she was saying, like from the get-go, she was like, these coaches are already so interested in you. And my coach was never like this. Like she just brushed me off like I was no big deal, and like, you need to take this opportunity if they're already like so invested like in having you at this school. So I definitely think it pushed me mainly, because knowing that she was so invested in this for me made me be like, oh my gosh, like she played college soccer, like I know I can do this too. So
That's awesome. I think this is such a great story from so many different perspectives, and
yeah.
I think I speak for everyone at Trace. We're extremely happy to be a very, very small part of your journey, and
Thank you.
I think you've got a lot of fans here at Trace because of it. So I want to thank you for your time today. I think
Yes, of course.
this is great. But yeah, no, I do appreciate the time, and we're excited to watch you going into next year.
Yes, I'm excited.
Awesome.